Welcome to the Imaginarium, the show where art, technology, and creativity intersect and combine to forge conversation that can only be found in the Imaginarium. I'm your host, Scott Colbert, and with me, as always, is the horror nerd himself, Todd Staruch. Hi, Todd.
Yes.
Yes.
I've got the whiskey ready.
Good. And welcome back from your vacation.
Thank you.
You were missed last week.
Oh, I'm sure.
We talked about some of the stuff that Wade and I and you talked about the week before that. We talked about grief and depression and politics and a whole bunch of stuff that I know you would have had quite a few things to say.
Yeah, probably. I have quite a few things to say about everything. So.
That's very true. And speaking of things to say, our guest today is somebody who's been on the show before, twice before, as a matter of fact. I had him on once, and then I liked it so much, I had him on the horror panel. And it's the one and only Jerry Janda. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, guys. And save there. I thought you were going to say, speaking of grief, Jerry Janda back.
Hey, if I'd been a little bit quicker and a little bit more on the ball, I probably could have said that.
Well, I'm glad you didn't. Anyway, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me back again.
Well, and thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I asked Jerry at the very last minute, meaning last night, because it had dawned on me with everything that had been going on the past week, I had forgotten to get a guest. And so Jerry was kind enough to say, "Sure, I'll be on." And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah. How many people turned you down before you got to me on your list?
Well, that's not really the point. The fact is that I thought about you.
You're right. I take it back. That was very generous of you. Thank you, sir.
Let's put it this way: Scott's cat was busy tonight.
Ouch. Okay.
Yes, she.
At least I know. At least I know where I stand.
Yes. Actually, you were the first person that I messaged about it. To be completely honest, so.
I was only kidding, and I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Well, because I was thinking, who that I know might be able to do it, and I knew a couple of people who I thought about had stuff going on, so I didn't bother, and I wasn't sure what you had going on, to be quite honest. So, and apparently nothing, because here you are. So I appreciate that.
No, I had lots of things going on, but I like the show so much that I canceled everything, cleared my schedule, just so I can hang with you guys, because it's been a while and I enjoyed talking.
It has. I think you're back on in February or March, I think.
Yeah, right after the release of Painkiller, and then I don't quite remember when the panel was, but yeah, I think it was towards the beginning of the year. Yeah.
So, how'd everything go with Painkiller?
We're still chugging along. Still waiting to hear from some film festivals. It's a tough field, I'm finding. This is my Painkiller. Being my first film has been quite a learning experience, going through the process of submitting to so many film festivals, and then hoping that you get in. So quite a few. We released the film Halloween of last year, so it's been around for almost a year now. But yeah, I'm still proud of it. It's still out there. It's actually, if nothing else, really led to some other exciting opportunities. Certainly wouldn't be talking to you guys right now if it hadn't been for Painkiller. So I think a lot of good things came from it.
Jerry, question. A lot of my filmmaker friends have told me that the whole process these days of submitting to film festivals and trying to get accepted is somewhat painful, and a lot of them seem to be very arbitrary as to what they're looking for. How has your experience been with the film festivals?
It hasn't been great, to be honest with you. I mean, we've played a couple. We've won some awards, which is nice, but I don't want to oversell it. We've certainly gotten quite a few rejections, and I'm probably being generous by saying that. But yeah, what happens now is it's not like the old days where you might fill out a form and drop a DVD in the mail and along with a check. You have sites like filmfreeway.com and withoutabox.com, which makes it very easy to submit to a bunch of different festivals. But with a site like that, more often than not, if you get rejected, you'll just get some sort of automatic message that says not accepted. Every once in a while, a form letter will come along with it, but generally not. Generally, you're just told you're not accepted. You don't know why. You don't know if they've even watched your film, to be quite honest with you. And it's difficult to know what they're looking for. I'm not saying that we should be guaranteed a slot. Of course, there are lots of great films out there. It's a very competitive field, but it's been my experience that I guess it is arbitrary. I was hanging with some guys the other night, also some local indie filmmakers, and they're going through the same thing. And it's almost like when you're trying to find a job. It helps to know somebody, right? You can sort of apply for a job that you see online or in a newspaper, but if you know somebody, it's going to go a lot further in your favor. And I think that some of that may be true with film festivals as well. If you have a connection, if you know somebody you can reach out to, you might have a better shot than if you were just submitting and nobody's ever heard of you before.
What's the most important thing when you submit something to a film festival?
Well, for me or for them, because I'm not sure what they're looking
for. Both. Let's do it that way.
Personally, when I'm looking, I'll do a little research because there are so many festivals out there, and you don't know how many are sort of fly-by-night operations. So I like to look for one that has a track record, not something that's starting out. It's not that I don't want to support new festivals, but part of me also feels like if you're doing a festival for the first time, that might be the time you should be thinking about maybe taking submissions for free, as opposed to charging people anywhere from like $30 to $50 per submission. It can get quite costly when people don't know who you are, and you've never really run a festival before, so you don't have any way of knowing as a filmmaker how many people might actually show up. So I think that's the most, and also just talking to other people, other filmmakers I've met over the course of the past year or so to see if they have recommendations, which sort of festivals they've submitted to and that they like, that type of thing. So for me, that's the most important thing. For the festivals, I can't honestly say. I think it might depend if the festival has a theme. They sometimes, if they're doing a mix of features and shorts, which most of them do, they probably have to look at time constraints as well, what's really going to fit into the program best. Sometimes they might want variety. So they, in some cases, it might be the type of film festival with a theme, but if it's a general horror film festival, they might look for a mixture of different genres and such. So that would be my guess, but I can't honestly say for sure.
Well, Todd, you do the film festival. Your Grindhouse nights at Cafe Z. What do you look for when you're looking to schedule movies?
Well, mine is a little bit different in the sense that I am looking specifically to showcase local New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania filmmakers, and to help them build their audience in this area. So I'm not the type of festival where I sort of open it up for submissions and see what happens. Although, as the event has grown, I do get people reaching out to me now. What I just look for is a film that I think the audience is going to appreciate, and that it will get a good reaction and keep people entertained. There are thousands of indie films out there, so you could almost show anything, but I don't want to be that festival, where I just throw anything up on the screen. So I look for quality things, like Painkiller. Jerry, you know how much I liked your film.
Yeah, I do.
So, one thing I thought about with the festivals is, and Jerry, I'd love to hear your opinion. There are so many of them now that when a filmmaker puts on their DVD box, I was accepted to the official selection of the South Wichita Falls Horror Film Festival.
with the
does it,
laurels. Yeah.
right? Does it even mean anything anymore, or is it getting very diluted? Unless you're in like Tribeca or New York Horror Film Festival or something like that.
Yeah, I mean that's an excellent point, and I have to admit I'm as guilty as the next guy. Before I even get into that, though, I wanted to take an opportunity to say, as Todd mentioned, he was gracious enough to allow Painkiller to screen at one of the Cafe Z events, and it's by far one of my favorite, if not my favorite. Because it was such a great crowd. It's an intimate setting. People ask great questions afterwards. Everybody there is super enthusiastic. So that was a great experience, and I wanted to at least take the opportunity to thank Todd again for that. And I as a fan, I do what I can to attend as well to support other filmmakers and to support Todd and what he's trying to do.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, but to get back to your question, as I was saying, if you go to the website for Painkiller, you'll see those types of laurels for whatever film festival did kind of accept us. I as you know, and trying to market the film, I'll do whatever I can. If we get positive reviews, if we get accepted in the film festivals, I'll put that stuff up on the site. I put it up on IMDb. I kind of trumpet it just because I hope it might give the film a bit more credibility. But I don't. To answer your question directly, Todd, I don't really know that it makes a difference. It certainly hasn't made a difference in terms of how many additional festivals I've gone into. It hasn't made a difference to people. It hasn't made a difference in terms of DVD sales or anything like that. I mean, we won Best Short at one of the Horror Hound Film Festivals, which for me was I felt like was a tremendous accomplishment. But that doesn't seem to matter to any other film festival out there. When I submit it, I point out where we've been accepted and some of the accolades that we've received, and who knows if they're even reading the cover letter. I can't say, but I don't know, Todd. I mean, it maybe as a filmmaker, and I'm not going to speak for every other filmmaker out there, but it does give you a sense of validation. I think creative people tend to be a little have self-doubt. I know I certainly fall into that category. So anytime somebody says I really enjoy the film or it's accepted into a festival, that means a great deal to me. But I don't know if it means anything to anyone else.
Okay, fair enough. Good answer.
Thank you. I try my best.
No, listen, at the end of the day, you're making films that you hope the audience is going to love and enjoy, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you're also making them for yourself to a big degree, and it's got to be something you're happy with. So if those film festivals give you that sense of accomplishment, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel about it. But on the flip side of that is after you get, the first time I got a rejection, my heart sank a little bit. And again, probably just being naive. It's my first film. And after a while, your skin toughens very quickly, which is probably a good thing if you're going to be putting yourself out there as a filmmaker, anything creatively. You need to be prepared for the fact that not everybody's going to like what you do. And especially in this day and age where people can get online and share their opinions and not always in the most kind fashion, you really need to be able to suck it up and deal and take it on the chin once in a while.
That sounded vaguely dirty.
I was thinking that. Take it on the chin. Suck it up and take it on the chin. Yeah.
So what we've learned is
let's edit that part out, guys.
Well, I was going to say what we've learned is Jerry likes facials.
Hey, I'll do anything to get into a film festival.
Well, if I had known that before, Grindhouse.
Oh, for you, it's on the house, Todd.
All right.
Now, the last time you were on, Jerry, you were talking about self-doubts, and you didn't really know what you were going to do after Painkiller. You've been keeping pretty busy. You've got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, I felt so beaten down after Painkiller. I thought, I'm never doing this again. But what I ended up doing was sort of approaching it from a different angle. What I ended up doing is I said, well, I'll never produce a film again. Financially, it's a drain. Trying to manage everything can be quite exhausting. But I do enjoy writing. I do enjoy acting. And so I tried to at least keep myself busy in that manner. What I had been doing is continuing to write scripts, and I had made contacts because of some of the festivals and screenings and just making contacts online, thanks to Painkiller. Just reaching out to directors and saying, hey, I've written a script. Not looking to get paid for it. I'm really just looking for a writing credit. If you're a director and you're looking for a project, feel free to take it and run with it. And the first, and that's how there's a feature film currently in production that I wrote. It kind of grew into something more than I ever anticipated. It was my first feature script, and I thought it might just be a small, cool little indie film, and it actually found a real producer who's putting money behind it and getting quality talent, named actors and stuff to be part of it. So that's been pretty exciting. But I'm also trying to stay involved in the indie scene, just doing small things, appearing in small films where people give me the opportunity to do a little bit of acting. I just try to stay involved. It's one of the things I remember talking about the first time I was on, Scott, was how much, and I think Todd will back me up on this one, in the tri-state area, maybe just in indie horror in general, there really is this sense of community and family where you can really depend on people, where they'll help you out however they can. And for my part, I try to repay that, because I think it's this great feeling of creativity and collaboration that happens on this level of filmmaking.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too. For the most part, Jerry, you and I, and seem to have fallen into that sort of camp where everybody is supportive and helpful. But I personally have also seen the other side of it too, where people are hyper competitive and a little bit catty, and I'm glad that I've been able to avoid that for the most part. The vast majority of people I hang out with in the indie film industry in this area are exactly what you said: helpful and friendly and nice. Who wants to surround themselves with negative and nasty people?
Yeah. And it's such a nice contrast, because we make some of these really vicious films, and some of the people who make the nastiest horror films are just the sweetest people in real life.
Exactly.
Everybody seems, for the type of content we put out, you think we'd all be a bunch of head cases, but I find for the most part everybody's pretty well adjusted and kind and pretty cool with one another.
Well, you haven't seen my basement.
Well, I do owe you something. I believe we promised, Todd, so I guess I'll see it soon enough.
How do people react who aren't in the horror community when you tell them what you do, or do you? Like maybe with coworkers or something. If they've seen Painkiller, do they look at you a little bit differently?
Some of them do. Yeah, I mean, I probably go out of my way to tell people I do this. I hope it doesn't come across like boasting or bragging. I'm just really proud of it, and I like people to know about it. And people, for the most part, think it's really cool, right? And I've even talked to people who said, "Wow, I didn't know you did that. I ought to try something like that." And I encourage people to do that, because people will say to me, I've always wanted to write a book, or I was thinking about doing my own movie. And I say, just go for it. I mean, that's sort of the advice that I got early on when I was kicking around ideas and dragging my feet. Just having someone say, get off your butt and do it. For better, for worse, get out there and do it. And that's sort of I think the attitude I had when I finally got around to making Painkiller was, one way or another, I'm going to get this thing done.
So what can you tell us about the feature film?
It's well, I guess I should start. It's called Black Wake, and I've described it as a Lovecraftian found footage film, and it's about halfway shot. So they're looking at a 2016 release, but like I said, it's sort of like a found footage film. I know that's not necessarily the most popular subgenre. I've always been partial to them. I like found footage movies for some reason, and I thought it might be fun to write one. I just needed a plot, and then I got some ideas that, like any idea, sort of snowballs. The initial idea came when I was watching a video of this thing that's called a horsehair worm coming out of a praying mantis. And when I first saw the video, I thought, this can't be real. In the comments, people were saying, oh my God, it's an alien. And to me, I was like, oh, it must be CGI. And we started doing a little research and reading about these things, and you begin to learn a bit more about these different types of parasites that target insects that pretty much, for lack of a better term, it turns them into zombies. It forces them to do things in order to prolong the parasite's life cycle. And I thought, wow, what if something like that existed that could affect humans? I didn't want to do another zombie movie, though, right? I didn't want to necessarily do something like The Bay, which was a really good found footage film about, a parasite affecting a seaside town. What ended up happening was I'm kicking around the idea, and around this time last year, I was on vacation, sitting on a beach looking at the ocean, and I just started thinking of Lovecraft and thinking about Cthulhu and things like that because I'm a huge fan. And I thought maybe that's the angle to take with this, and that's how it began to turn into this story that I ended up writing, and ultimately somebody picked it up and decided to make a feature out of it.
And that's going to star Eric Roberts.
Eric Roberts is in it. Tom Sizemore is supposed to be shooting his scenes this week. So yeah, they've gotten quite a few recognizable actors to be part of it. So it's been really cool there's a teaser trailer out there right now for what they've shot thus far. It's a sort of a surreal feeling seeing Eric Roberts, reciting dialogue that I wrote. It's not anything I ever would have guessed would happen in my lifetime, So it's been kind of thrilling.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm a fan of found footage movies as well. But I understand why people don't like them. It eventually just got overdone a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pull it off the right way because, I saw one recently called The Gallows. And while I didn't hate it, there were so many points where you stop and think, why in the world is that person holding a camera while they are running for their life? Why would you be doing that? So it's difficult. I'm so interested to see what Jeremiah and you do with this genre because of those challenges,
Yeah, and when Todd says Jeremiah, he means Jeremiah Kipp is the director.
Yes.
He's also the guy who directed Painkiller. He was the one who I shared this script with him, and he managed to find someone who was willing to produce it. But it's kind of funny how it came about, though, because I heard Jeremiah did an interview one time, and he was asked, well, what subgenre of horror film do you really not like? And he said found footage. And that got me thinking, hey, I wonder if I could write a found footage film that Jeremiah would be interested in. And also, when we filmed Painkiller, we were in some very tight quarters where we were all ready to strangle each other by the time it was all said and done. So we were joking, the next movie's got to be on a beach. So that's what I ended up doing. Of course, now I hear like, oh, there's sand everywhere. I said, well, the next one will be in Antarctica. I don't know what else to tell you. It's just like, I can't seem to make anybody happy with the locations I'm choosing for these stories.
This just in, there's sand at the beach.
Yeah, exactly, right. But I haven't really been involved in the production at all. One thing that's been interesting through the process is when I wrote Painkiller, I just wrote it, and since I paid for it, I pretty much had complete control. Not complete control, but I had a lot of control over it. And when you have somebody else takes your script and they start sending you notes, which is not something I'd ever experienced before, about changes they want to make or new directions they want to go in, and at that point in time, you try to do what you can creatively to keep the producer happy and keep things chugging along. But the other thing that happened too is it turned out I didn't even know how to write a script. It turned out I didn't know how to format them properly. I wasn't necessarily writing them properly. Clearly I was writing them in a way that people could read them and understand what the story was. But once they wanted to start sharing the script with real actors, their agents, someone like an Eric Roberts or a Tom Sizemore, it became very important for the script to look a lot more polished than sort of the amateur job I was doing with something like Painkiller.
So did you go out and learn how to format, or did you have somebody do it?
I just got software. They have this really great software that pretty much does it all for you. But then I just did a bunch of reading. I started looking at other scripts for ideas to see how they would tell the story, what type of way they might describe a shot or set up a scene or that type of thing, right? So, I mean, I've never studied any of this stuff formally, script writing, that is. So it's almost like I've been learning on the job, so to speak.
That's one of those things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. You know, the formatting of a script and how important that may be.
Yeah. Like I said, with Painkiller, I sort of grabbed a template. I did a search for template and grabbed it off online and just started typing. And I had no clue. And then when I started writing other scripts and sharing them with directors and hearing them saying, what the hell is this? Well, it's a script, you know. I began to discover that I really wasn't going about it in the most professional or acceptable way possible. So they have software that really helps you with the formatting and helps you keep track of characters and plot points. It's really cool, actually. It was a little bit of an investment up front, but I already feel like I got my money's worth from it.
What program is it?
It's called Final Draft. It's I think because at one point in time the producer sent me back a version of the script as a final draft, a format, and I was like, I can't open this file. What kind of file is this? I didn't even know what it was, and that's when I found out the Final Draft is probably one of the better known and widely used software programs for script writing, which just goes to show you how much I actually knew about writing scripts was getting a professional script back from somebody, not being able to open it and saying, why can't I work in Word anymore? Which is basically how I had been, in Microsoft Word is how I'd been doing it prior to that.
You know something though, Jerry, all kidding aside, I actually think that's really cool though. Like I think it's awesome that you just said, I think I want to write and make films, so I'm going to do it. I'm not entirely sure what software to use. I didn't go to film school. I just want to do this. And you just went out and did it. And okay, so you made some mistakes along the way. There are these hot shots while I went to NYU film school, and they churn out crap. And you're like, well, you know what? You better get your money back because it didn't take. Yeah. So I personally, I think that's really cool. Like, it's an amusing story, but I do think it's awesome that it happened, and
clearly it was enough to at least sell or get people on board for some of the scripts, right? Even though they weren't maybe not prepared in the most professional way or formatted in the way, or I wasn't using the right lingo. I was having a conversation with a cinematographer recently, and I was like, I don't know the name of this shot. I know how I want the camera to move, but it's not a pan, and it's not, it's not tilt. It's not a close up. I can't think of it. Right. So you sort of work around things like that until you pick up the lingo. But with Painkiller, I just sat down and wrote it. And I don't know whether it was because I was writing the checks too. Nobody seemed to mind. You know what I mean? People read it and said, oh, yeah, I like this. I want to make it. I'm like, cool. And I thought, well, I must know what I'm doing. It turned out, well, maybe not so much. But I appreciate it, Todd. It was for me, when I sat down to write Painkiller, it had been bouncing around in my head for so long. Initially, I thought, even if I just write this thing, I'll be proud of that accomplishment. And I didn't necessarily think anybody would like it or want to help me make it. That was, of course, a thrill when that stuff finally happened. But my first thought was, I just want to write this because I think it's a good story. It's in my head. And if I can do that, then I'll feel like I've accomplished something. And fortunately, it went a little bit further than that, of course.
Cool.
Well, if you had your choice between going through what you went through on Painkiller with Black Wake and having all of the, and having a lot of the decision making on your part, or just being hands off like you are with it, which would you prefer?
That's a tough question. I almost, this is going to seem like a cop-out answer. I wish there were more like of a happy medium. Do you know what I mean? Where you could retain a bit more creative control and maybe be a bit more involved in the production, but, not have people come to you with bills. You know what I mean? Or having to deal with, is a big part of it too, is dealing with the different personalities that you might have on set and making sure everybody's happy and working well together, and you at the same time not wanting to lose your temper and start screaming at somebody because you're so pissed off. This is just like, I get notes, I revise the script, I send it back. It's pretty sweet. But at the same time, the script that I wrote and what they're shooting now, not exactly the same thing, but fairly close. And even the changes that have happened, there hasn't been anything that we've done where I felt like, oh, this is a huge mistake. And the producer and Jeremiah have been very supportive of me creatively. They might come back to me and say, well, we would like to go in a slightly different direction, but they're not necessarily dictating terms to me, right? So just to give you a very basic example, the initial name of the script was The Seas from Whence They Came. That was the working title of the script I wrote. And the name of that was because I wanted to come up with my own version of the Necronomicon for the story. That's part of it. And the name of the book in the movie is The Seas from Whence They Came. But the producer thought that title's not going to sell. Nobody's going to know what that means. It sounds really weird and outdated. And what he allowed me to do was pitch like 5 additional alternate titles, one of which was Black Wake. And Jeremiah, he liked Black Wake. So in a sense, I still gave the movie its title. It just wasn't the title I had in the first place. And not necessarily the title I wanted, but I wasn't completely cut out of the process. And you hear about screenwriters all the time. Somebody takes their script and do whatever they want with it. And the initial screenwriter has no say on it whatsoever. At least in this case, I've been involved just about every step of the way with the script and the story.
Well, and I think maybe knowing Jeremiah and having worked with him before in Painkiller might have made that a little bit easier for you to have some extra input. I possibly most of my interaction has been with the producer, because he's the one who's financing the film, and of course he's more than entitled to make sure that he's satisfied with it, because he's the one taking all the risks, and of course he wants to have the best possible product to show for it at the end of the day. But he's been very easy to work with. I have no complaints at all, but I don't know if he's giving me that creative freedom or, giving me that sort of wiggle room because, Jeremiah is suggesting that, or if it's a combination of the two. I'm honestly not sure. I like that original title. It actually sounds very much like a Lovecraft title.
Yeah, and honestly, I did plead for it a little bit, not to the point where I lost my dignity, but I did try to sort of sell it, and I wish we could have kept it. But at the same time, everybody I've talked to who's, I think, a Lovecraft fan has said, yeah, I like that title. But you got to think in terms of broader appeal, which I completely understand. That's how he's coming at it. So at least the name still lives on in the movie in terms of, again, it's the name of the book that is featured fairly prominently throughout the film. It was a big part of it too. One of the things I tried to explore in the film is, of course, we're familiar with any of us who are Lovecraft fans or any of the Lovecraft contemporaries who sort of wrote in the same vein as Lovecraft, all sort of came up with their own sort of cursed books and things like that. And I thought, those are all cool and they're sort of ancient, but at some point in time, somebody had to sit down and write that first page. And what's that creative process like? How does someone go about writing the Necronomicon? I don't think it starts out by, thanking, I'd like to thank my wife for all her support and stuff like that. And nor do I think it would read like a traditional book or even an encyclopedia. I kind of envision it as being, scribbles and drawings and ramblings, because whoever's writing this book is more than likely insane, and people who try to understand the book generally go insane as well. So what's the process? How does that happen? And that's something I tried to explore a bit in the movie. And yeah, the name of the book is the Seas from Whence They Came is the name of the book that's in the film. But it's not a book so much as I also thought, well, if it's an insane guy writing it, he's not necessarily going down to Kinko's. You know what I mean? He's kind of it's sort of a mishmash of papers and written in different like inks and crayons and held together with wire and string. So it just looks like this Frankenstein's monster of a book, which I think would be a bit more accurate if you think of the mindset of the person attempting to capture all this information in a written format.
Sure. It would be more like a collection of notes than an actual.
Exactly. Yeah.
It makes me wonder, in today's day and age, how would somebody write an Necronomicon on the computer? And would that even work? Could you do something like that electronically?
I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody's on top of that. I feel like that's sort of that may have been explored in a short story that's right on the tip of my mind that I can't remember. I always felt like, I guess it depends on your interpretation of how these things work. That if you were to take the Necronomicon and scan it in, for example, it wouldn't quite have the same impact. It almost there's like insanity seeped into the pages. You know what I mean? It's sort of like a tactile thing where you need to touch it to really kind of absorb it. And maybe that's just my way of thinking about it. But I somehow think something would get lost in the translation if you were to maybe put it in an electronic format.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. That's just how my mind works.
Yeah.
But I think definitely with something like the Necronomicon or any type of magic, magic type of magic, there has to be a texture and a feel to it, and there has to be a weight to paper. I mean, there's a big difference between reading, just reading a regular book and as opposed to an ebook, and when you got something like Necronomicon, there would definitely be something lost in the translation too.
The way I tried to describe it, and I don't know if I don't know how much dialogue will actually end up in the film because there's an awful lot of it. But the way the reader describes the experience with this book is similar to those magic image things that were really popular years back, where it just looked like a bunch of squiggles and you needed to like cross your eyes and stare at it. And after a while you might see a unicorn, but if you blinked or stepped in the wrong direction, you'd lose it. So it's almost like something's hidden in the details that you can't absorb just by reading it. You know what I mean? It's like you need to experience it. And I was actually pretty proud of that description of it. I hope it makes the film, but that's how I envision this book working, because I don't think it's sort of like an encyclopedia where you just read it and absorb facts like you would with other types of nonfiction or whatever the case may be.
We're thinking very deeply about mythical tomes. Well, what if you scanned the Necronomicon? I'm like, what?
But these are important questions that need to be answered.
Well, they are absolutely important. And I never could do those fucking things.
Oh, they're maddening. What was it in Mallrats? Where the one guy is just standing and people would come up and see it right away, and he would just lose his mind. Just get out of here.
I never felt so stupid in my entire life when people could see them off the bat, and I could stare at it for 20 minutes and not see a damn thing. That's when I thought, they're just lying. They're full of shit. They don't see any goddamn thing in there.
Maybe that's.
I always thought it was bullshit. It's like one of those things, like you don't hear the thing until someone puts the words, and now your brain sort of puts it together. Like you don't see the bunny until someone tells you, "Look, that cloud looks like a bunny." So I'm calling bullshit on the whole thing, and I have spoken.
Yeah. Well, you don't really see them anymore either. They were all the rage for like a minute, and then it just sort of went away.
Yeah, just like Waldo. Did everybody just stop caring where the fuck Waldo was?
We couldn't find him.
He's in one of those books now.
Yeah, he was reading the Necronomicon.
There's an idea in there somewhere.
Somewhere. Maybe that's the sequel.
You're also working on micro movies, I think is what you referred to them as.
Micro shorts. Yeah.
Micro shorts.
So yeah, one of the things in doing my research and submitting Painkiller, I found film festivals out there that are dedicated to micro shorts or accept micro shorts. And I'm thinking, what the heck is a micro short? And those are ones that range anywhere from like 2 to 5 minutes. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to maybe just take a basic idea, turn it into a very short film that could be shot in a day with you gather together a bunch of people you trust, and you can do it on a shoestring budget, and it allows everyone to be creative and be part of the filmmaking process, but it's not breaking the bank. It's not a real drain on people's time. Maybe you get together on a Saturday or Sunday and boom, you bang it out. And I've already written one, and I shared it. I'm working with Jeff Gould, who was the cinematographer for Painkiller, also one of the producers, the editor. He did just about everything: location scout, caterer. Jeff was great all around resource for Painkiller, and it's going to be a great opportunity for me to work with him again, and maybe try different things too. I'd love the art of making film. I'd like to learn all the different aspects of it. I'd like to be in front of the camera. I like to write. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to learn a little bit more on how a film is shot. Maybe help with the directing of the actors or actresses. I think it's going to be a blast. We'll see how the first one goes, but I have at least a half dozen of these things in mind, and I'm sure I'll continue to write them as they pop into my head.
When I saw the post that you wrote on Facebook about that, I thought it was a really cool idea. And having been a judge for a couple of film festivals, some of my favorite films have been those exact films, like super shorts, where you manage to tell an entire story in maybe 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like an entire coherent story. And I think that's amazing, to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I think my own personal experience in looking at a lot of indie shorts, I feel like there is a lot of fat that could be trimmed out of them. I think, one of my general criticisms about short films in general, at least the ones that I see, is that there's a problem with pacing. And stuff that could, the first cut of Painkiller was about 17 minutes, and we managed to get it down to about 15. So, that may not sound like a lot, but for a very short film, cutting out 2 minutes is actually a big chunk of change. And but I think it's, as a result, you get a better paced film, right? There doesn't feel like there's any padding or any fluff. And with these micro shorts, it's you're right into it. You know what I mean? It's really explosive, and sometimes it can work and sometimes it can't. I guess maybe the best examples of people really don't know what we're talking about, if you were to look at the ABCs of Death series, right? You have to do the entire alphabet, right? You can't do 15 minutes on every letter. It'll be a mini series. It has to be really quick, and some of them aren't so great. Some of them are really fantastic. It can run the gamut.
Yeah, I look at those as almost like short stories.
Yeah, exactly. So the one I wrote today, the one that I wrote recently, it's only 5 pages. The script is only 5 pages, and if you know anything about a script, 5 pages is pretty short. It's because it's just not a whole lot. There isn't a whole lot of text on a page in a script. So 5 pages is pretty darn short.
Do you have a preference for what length you write? The micro short, just a short, or feature length? Which ones gave you the most satisfaction?
I don't always know until I sit down and write it. With Black Wake, I initially thought it was going to be another short film, and before I knew it, I had like 60 pages, and it grew into a feature because I felt like it had to be a feature. And I think I'm probably not unique in that regard. People sit down and they write, and maybe a short story is what it needs to be, and it's fun to write that short story. You sit down and you write, and it turns into a feature, and that's fun as well. I can't say one way or the other that I thought this was a better experience than that. I mean, I guess the only thing I could say is that you end up with a finished product a lot faster, and you don't have to proofread as much, and you don't have to go back and change as much. But I think they're all satisfying for different reasons. But I wouldn't say that I prefer one over the other.
You said something a couple of minutes ago, Jerry, that I agree with completely. A lot of the films that it's a funny thing. A lot of the features that I see as a festival judge, I say, wow, it's very clear that this was a short film, but the director felt that he wanted it to be a feature. So There's a lot of nonsense. And then there's a lot of shorts where I go, oh my God, I would love to see this as a feature just to see what more they could do with this concept. I think it cuts a little bit both ways.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think one of the more gratifying things that has happened with Painkillers, when people come up to me and say, I'd really like to see this as a feature, that they enjoyed the story so much, or they think the characters are so interesting that they think it warrants even more time than what was spent on it. To me, that's a great compliment. But you're right. It can be both ways. You could see a short and you're into it and then it's over and you're like, no, I want more. Don't do this to me. Whereas other features, it's almost like watching paint dry, and you're like, man, this scene's go, and it's like, you don't have to show everything you shot. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't need to show the guy open the refrigerator and pull out a bottle of milk and pull out a glass and pour the glass of milk and put the bottle back in the refrigerator. I get it. He's going to drink a frigging glass of milk. Get to the point already. You know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff, really, that can get a little aggravating as a viewer, where it's just, speed it up a little bit here. This is so unnecessary.
Well, pacing is important.
I notice that mostly in setups. That's generally where directors tend to put a lot of padding. And I've seen that a lot in some indie movie screeners that I've been sent over the last few months. The first half hour just goes so freaking slow because I understand the need to set up the story, but it doesn't take a half an hour.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, I had my own challenges with this. With the way I'd written Painkiller and the first cut of it, the beginning was a lot longer, but it was more like along the lines of the guys just having small talk about, hey, did you have a nice day? Can I get you a cup of coffee? Do you take it with cream and sugar? Jeremiah looked at a lot of that stuff, and when he looked at the first cut and said, this can all come out. It's just, how did he call it? It's just like a lot of throat clearing, right? It's just, it can cut to, there was more of a conversation in the beginning that didn't really add anything to the plot or the story. It was just filler. I didn't mean it that way. I had never written a script before. It's just the way it came out. But when that was the kind of thing he cut out and made for a much better paced film. But I think I was fortunate with my short that I had professionals like Jeremiah, like Jeff involved. If you're a lot of indie filmmakers, short filmmakers, they're kind of figuring it out on their own. So I don't mean to sound too harsh. They're learning as they go in a way that I am. But I think if maybe that's one thing that they could learn from the first experience, is figuring out how you can tighten your film up a bit and really work on the pacing.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I saw a film. It doesn't matter what the name is, but there was I timed it because I couldn't believe it was so long. It was like 4.5 minutes of just watching the guy, drive somewhere in his car. So here he is approaching the Lincoln Tunnel. Here he is in the Lincoln Tunnel. Here he is coming out. We get it. He's going somewhere, Yeah. I think filmmaker, and I'm not being a filmmaker, I don't know what it's like to get so involved creatively in something. I think some people just can't bring themselves to leave anything they've shot on the cutting room floor, Yeah. It's how do you cut off a piece of yourself,
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree. And it's the same with writing. It's very hard to edit yourself. It's almost like you need an impartial third party to look at this and give you that kind of feedback, because I think it's tough. I mean, even with the stuff that Jeremiah was suggesting, we take at a painkiller. At first, I wasn't convinced. I felt kind of bad about it. But when I saw the next cut of the film after we had made all the changes Jeremiah suggested, I had to admit he was absolutely right about everything. But if I didn't have someone like Jeremiah to provide that kind of feedback, I would have thought that 17-minute film would have been fine. And it wasn't as good of a film as the one that we ended up making in the end.
So what did we learn here, folks? Jerry Janda's ego is not quite that big.
I don't know about that.
Jerry, it's been a pleasure having you on again.
Oh, has it been an hour? Wow, man. Time just flew by. It's great talking to you guys.
It did. Well, I'm going to do a Halloween show, and so I'm going to have you on for that.
Love it. Love it. My favorite time of year.
Yeah.
It's my Christmas. So
hopefully I'll be able to get you fantastic. And Jeremiah and Tom back on.
That's great. Oh, Tom's in Black Wake, by the way. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but
I thought he was. I remember seeing something about that, but I wasn't quite sure, so I didn't say anything because I didn't want to sound like an idiot.
No. You're absolutely right. That was you could see him in the trailer. That's Tom Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, in the trailer.
And Tom is a great director as well as an actor.
Yeah, and Tom's part of that crew I had mentioned earlier, where we all sort of like try to help each other out. Here I wrote a film. Tom ended up being in it. Tom is maybe going to direct a short I co-wrote with somebody else. So we all support one another. I think is fantastic.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Black Wake. I'm really looking forward to that because I'm a huge fan of Painkiller. You know that, and I read a couple of scripts that you sent me, and I absolutely loved those. And I love your writing. You have a very, very unique voice, which I really appreciate.
And that means a lot because as I said, I've read your book. I thought it was a fantastic novel. So it means a lot when people who are good writers say, "I really enjoy your writing," because they know what they're talking about.
We should call this the ass kissing episode.
Well, I think at the beginning we established I do a little bit more than just kiss ass. Maybe we should leave it at that, huh?
Probably a good idea.
And end it like we started it with,
in the gutter.
In the gutter, yeah.
Oh, that's the best place for this show, in the gutter. Well, and we'll have the usual social media links on the show page, and the teaser trailer that's up on YouTube, isn't it, Jerry?
Yeah. So if you go, there's a Black Wake. There's a Black Wake page. You just look for Black Wake trailer on YouTube. Yeah, you can find it there. I'll
embed it in the article.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
I'll put it up on the page so people don't have to go look for it.
Yeah.
And I'll put your social media links on there. And you can also subscribe to the Imaginarium on iTunes, as well as rate and leave a review. And if you enjoy the show, check out our other podcasts on the Super. Oh, well, fuck. If you enjoy the show.
Wow.
See? And I'm even reading the goddamn script. If you enjoy the show, check out our other podcasts at thesupernauts.com, including Jailbait, my other podcast with UK filmmaker Wade Radford. And that is going to once a month starting in January. And I'm going to have a different podcast with one of our former guests, Eli Hayes, about movies to take up the other spot for Jailbait. And that's going to premiere in September.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's going to be really good. And I'm actually kind of scared about that because he knows far more about movies than I do. I mean,
well, you'll learn something then. Look at it positively.
Well, he talks about movies I didn't even know existed. So I really gonna have to brush up on my.
I'm gonna have to check out that show. I'm always interested in hearing about things I've never. I like to look out new things that Jeff's never seen before.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a good thing because, I already have a big list of movies that he's talked about. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But anyway, until next time, may all your journeys be filled with pure imagination.